Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this tutorial in which we're looking at creating this space nebula environment. And since I last saw you, I've added a load more layers to this background starfield comp. And really I was doing just exactly what I was showing you before, just simply duplicating them, offsetting them in Z, moving them around in X and Y. I've also added some glow to some of those layers, changed the saturation and the value using the hue saturation filter. So we've got loads of differentiation, and I think it's starting to look pretty rich and full and organic. So the next step is to start building up our nebula itself. And to do that, let's bring in those renders that we made at the end of the last tutorial. If you remember, we made clouds A, B, C, D and E, or rather, I hope you did, because I just showed you how to make 2 of those. So I'm just going to drag those in to the project into a new group. And with them all selected, I'm going to hit F1 and I'm going to come to their blending mode and I'm going to set that to screen just to get us started. And already that actually looks quite good already. Actually, we can stop there. Thanks very much for watching. No, seriously, we're going to do a bit more. Let's first of all scale those down, I think, to 50%, just so they're not all in the way. Now, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to hide all these. Let me call this Nebula A, this group that I've put them into, and I'm going to hide that group, because before I even start on that, I want to start putting in some washes of colour that will help us create the overall effect of gas moving through this environment. So I'm going to make a new group, that's Command-Shift-N to make a new group, and let's call this group Gas. And then let's hit B for the Bezier tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out some shapes around the area that I want my nebula to be. It doesn't have to be hugely accurate, we're just really wanting to sort of sketch out some rough kind of path. Like that will do. Then I'm going to hit F4 to come to the shape fill here. The fill mode I'm going to set to gradient. And then I'm just going to select the adjust item tool, so that's tabbing through till I get to that. And then what I can do is I can adjust the gradient beginning and end so it stretches across my shape. Let's come over to the inspector and let's twirl open the gradient itself here. Let's just play with these colours. I'm going to click on that left-hand tab, click on the swatch, and we can do a little bit of colorization. So I'll go for that on that end. This I want to be more purple. Then I'm going to click to make a tab in the center. I want to make this more kind of red. We could make lots of tabs really here and just kind of break it up, make it more interesting. So let's go for something a little bit contrasting here, maybe make that a little bit more blue. So you get the idea. And then we're going to close that down. Let's increase the feather here and increase that to about 500 so it's really nice and soft. And then we can adjust the fall off to bring that back in again a bit, like so. And then F1 for its properties here. Come down to the blend mode, let's set that to screen. And this is, as I say, it really just wants to be a wash rather than anything too strong. So I'm going to try coming down to about 5% opacity. That's probably down too far. Let's try 10. So there you go, that's started to throw in this nice wash of colour. And I'm going to carry on and do a couple more. So let's hit the Bezier tool again. I want to draw something that goes up towards here, takes in this top half of the screen here, maybe comes across here, sort of overlapping with the one I've already done, maybe down to here, like so. Again, F4 for the fill, let's set that to gradient, twirl open the gradient, Let's adjust the gradient position as well by tabbing to the Adjust Item tool, showing the overlays by hitting Command /. So that over there, this over here, we could do something like that. Let's go all the way over there. Again, let's change these colours up a bit. On the left hand side, I want to kind of start going nice and warm over the left hand side because I want this to be hotter and warmer. And then I'll click another tab here, make that more sort of red as we go towards the top there. As we come over here, again I'm going to make that a little bit more blue. Far end I'll make more purple. Again, this is all about using your skill and judgment rather than fixating on anything that I'm doing. I think actually I've made my shape a little bit wrong, so I'm just coming back to edit points here and I'm going to just refine that a bit. Let's come over to the feather here in the inspector and set that to 400 again. Again, adjust the fall off to reduce that down a bit. F1 to come to the blending here. Again, let's set that to screen and let's reduce that down to 5 again, or maybe 7. Let's go for that. I want to just add another little splash in here because I want another hot end to the nebula over here. So another B for the Bezier tool, a little shape in here, keep it nice and thin this time. Actually, I might just do a nice thin sort of tongue coming down to there, over here, like that. Again, F4 for the shape, gradient. Let's turn on the overlays, tab till we get to the adjust item. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I wanted to adjust the gradient, not the item itself, so adjusting the gradient like that. Let's again come back to the gradient. I think I'll set this, let's click on that colour tab at the left. Let's make this nice and purpley there. And let's click in the middle, start to make this nice and yellowy. And over on the end, we'll make that more red. And again, down to the feather, 400. Adjust the fall off right down. You come up even more fall off like that. F1 for its blending here. Again, let's use screen. And again, let's reduce that right down to about 10. And those colours have really, I think, added a lot already to this scene. So if I turn that on and off, you can see how that's just given it that gaseous effect. Let's have a RAM preview. That's really added a lot of kind of atmosphere to the scene and starting to look pretty good. So just before we move on to bringing in the clouds and building up the nebula, I want to move these gas layers back in space so we're a little bit further away from the camera. So I'm going to select them all, hit F1 for the inspector. They're currently at 375 and the reason for that is that's where the camera was when I made them. But I'm going to push them back to -1000 like that, and then as you know we just need to scale them back up again like so. Okay, so we can move on. So now let's turn back on our Nebula A group like so and twirl it open, and let's push these clouds back also to -1000, so they're sitting in among that gas. -1000 there, so that's all 5 layers. Now I'm just going to turn off all but one, so select them all, click the disclosure box and hide them. And what I want to do is I just want to move this around till I get it into some sort of shape. So let's hold down the Alt key and move this same one across to here, and this time around let's rotate him around like that. Let's maybe turn on Cloud B and see what we can do with that. Let's move that into there. Maybe clone that, bring it over here, scale it right down. Again, let's flip it over probably, like that. Let's turn on Cloud C. Now cloud C is a nice sort of little thin one, and I want to make a sort of thin band going through down there at the bottom. I'm going to again hold down the Alt key, move that along, flip him over like that, scale it down a bit maybe. I'll turn on cloud D. Cloud D could be useful over here perhaps, maybe a little bit smaller like that. Where else could we use it? We could use him over here, coming off the end of that possibly. Close, scale it down a bit, and let's turn on cloud E. What can we do with that? That's quite nice where it is actually, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce its opacity down to about 50%, so it's just more hazy. Let's clone that as well by holding the Alt key, move this over to here. That looks quite good. Good thing to do is keep gaps, because if you keep gaps it's going to look much more Nebula-like. There are always these sort of dramatic holes that you get, which are really impressive. So let's bring that level back up again, I think. Maybe not all the way, maybe to about 75%. At this point I want to add some colour into what I've done so far. So I'm going to select that Nebula group, Command 2 for the library. I'm going to come to Filters, Colour Correction, and I'm going to look for colour balance, and I'm going to drag it onto that Nebula group like that, and hit F3 for the inspector. So I'm going to click on the swatch for the midtones and move the colour picker over where I can see it, and I'm going to make the midtones kind of purpley, and the highlights I just want to be somewhere over here. Again, just kind of, I'm trying to keep it all toned down so it's not too bright as yet. Just a word of warning, don't click on the shadows. I'm going to show you what happens if you click on the shadows. You'll see that I'm seeing through all sorts of edges that I don't want to see, so best leave the shadows alone. And let's move on. So what I'm going to do, I think, is probably make a new group, Command-Shift-N, come back to my file browser and pick up those 5 clouds elements and bring them into this new group. And I'm going to call it Nebula B. And I'd like to select all these clouds, F1 for the inspector. Let's set the blend mode again to screen. And for the position here, under Z, let's push them back behind our current layer of clouds. Let's push them back to -1500. So again, we've got some parallax going on in here with these clouds. Again, let's turn them all off by clicking the disclosure triangle and turn back on cloud A. Before we go too far, let's add back in a color balance filter to this new group, just so we can get a feel for what we're doing. So Command 2 for the library, look for color balance, add it to Nebula B. Just so this is a bit more logical, I'm going to move Nebula B behind Nebula A. So that's Command /bracket. And let's close down Nebula A while we're at it. Let's click on the color balance, F3 for the inspector. Again, let's make some adjustments to these colors. See how that all works. I think I want these tones to be heading warmer than before, so let's also click on the highlights. Just get them feeling like they're a bit warmer, so the whole thing still hangs together. Right, that's cloud A. Let's turn on the overlays. I quite like what it's doing here. It's giving me a much sort of softer, broader cloud in the background, and I think that will really just help to give this sort of gaseous effect. I think what we can also do is just reduce the opacity a bit. That's down to about 75. So turn on the overlays again. Let's make a duplicate of this by holding down the Alt key as we drag. I'm going to shrink that down. I just want some detail in that corner over there. Shall we flip that? See how that works? Yes, let's flip that and see how that works. Let's turn on cloud B. Again, we're looking for nice soft areas with this, just sort of sitting back behind everything else. And let's turn on cloud C. Here's our nice little thin one. And what I'll do is I'll use this one down here to give some sort of backing to that little chunk that I made down there. We could probably reduce that opacity a bit more for that one. Just So it's kind of nice and gassy. Turn on cloud D. We don't necessarily need all of these, but it doesn't hurt. Let's shrink it down a bit and again reduce the opacity. We can probably go to 50%. Lots of subtle detail is what's going to really make this work, you'll find. Turn on cloud E. What's that doing? That's sort of through the middle here. And let's scale that down a bit. Quite a bit. Possibly use that down in here. Okay, so that's our Nebula B, and I'm basically going to do the same thing again. So Command-Shift-N to make a new group. This one I'll call Nebula C, and this one is going to be in front of everything, and it'll start to be a lot more interesting when I put this one in. So again, come to the file browser, bring in those 5 elements, like so. F1 for its properties here, again blend mode, let's set to screen, and again Command 2 for the library. Let's bring in a color balance filter, F3 to set that up. So this time let's adjust the midtones so they're quite warm. Highlights again, probably even more, somewhere like that. Maybe push those midtones a bit too high, starting to see some edges. Let's go for that. Okay, let's turn everything off apart from Cloud A and see what we can do. Turn on the overlays. Now this batch I want to be super small. In actual fact, when I grab them all, because I know I want to make them super small, I'm going to reduce those collective scale down to 25. So I've selected them all, scale down to 25, or even, let's go for 20. Okay. Again, select Cloud A on its own, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add details in like this. Bring that down here. We can have some more in there. If I flip that over, that'll be quite good. We can shrink these down, because this is all about providing a fine detail. So Cloud B is quite good. Let's put that in there. That's quite nice. Again, let's get it nice and small. I can probably duplicate him and bring him over. I want a nice big hot area over here as well. I'm going to turn on Cloud C, and I'll bring that over. Again, we can use that just to emphasize this sense of a bridge coming up towards this area here. Flip that over so that continues on into that area there. Cloud D, let's bring him in. Use that to beef up this area here, maybe. Again, just shrink it down. All about just little localized detail. Alt, drag it to make a copy over here. Make that nice and small. And turn on Cloud E as well. Where's Cloud E? Over here. We can use that in here. Make that nice and small too. Like so. And what we might do is hit F1, and instead of screen, let's try color dodge for these. And you can see how that's immediately, let me just turn that on and off. So that's where we were with screen. Turn off the overlays. Color dodge suddenly gives me that really nice bright bit. So I might just try that with the one down. There you go. It's starting to build up that nice hot spot. So let's look what else we could do. Over here, let's also set that to color dodge. Starting to really burn and look pretty nice there. Okay, so let's just close up Nebula C. I just want to move gas below all of the nebulas. So I'm going to use Command /bracket and just move it down. And that's had a slightly different compositing effect that I think it looks a bit nicer. Okay, so the next thing is I'm going to make a nebula D and play around with that, but you don't really need to see me do it yet again. You've understood the basic principles. So we've got nice soft areas, we've got sort of architectural areas, and we've got these hot, bright, detailed areas. I'm going to fill in sort of somewhere between the details and the rest of it, just adding more complexity. So I'll come back when that's done. So welcome back, and obviously I've cheated a bit here because in addition to Nebula D, I've also made Nebula E, but I just thought I'd do the best job I could. And if we look, here is a RAM preview of where we're at so far. Camera is moving much too fast through this scene, but it gives you an idea of the parallax that's going on between all those layers. So there's one thing I want to do to add to the nebula look, and that's something a little bit different to what we've done so far, and that involves making yet another group. So Command Shift N, and I'm going to call this Dark Nebula, and it'll become obvious why in 1 second. So again, I'm going to come back to the file browser and grab those same 5 elements and bring them in. So first of all, I want to select all 5 elements and come to the blend mode and set that to add. Then I'm going to make a new group within this dark nebula group above cloud E. Command Shift N. I'm going to make that 2D. I'm going to grab these 5 elements and bring them into that new group, and I'm going to call this invert. First of all, I'm going to select the dark nebula group, come to the library, Command 2, and apply a negative filter to the dark nebula. And then I'm going to take the levels and apply it to the invert group. Next, I'm going to take the dark nebula group, hit F1 for the inspector, and the blend mode for this group I'm going to set to multiply. And that's doing what I want it to do, but there's something horribly wrong, as you can see, with all of these edges. I do indeed want these dark black bits in the middle, but I don't want to see all this nonsense around here. And so to avoid that, I'm going to make a new group again, Command Shift N. I'm going to make it 2D. I'm going to come to the library, generators, and I'm going to select color solid, apply that to the group, F4 for the generator, and I'm going to make that black. I'm going to take this group, I'm going to call it black, and I'm going to move it all the way to the back of the composition. So that's Shift Command forward square bracket, and that sticks that behind. And now that has taken care of those edges. Something very important to bear in mind, you pretty much always need to be compositing ultimately against a black background, almost whatever job you do. So actually it's quite a good technique that I always forget to do, which is literally just make a black background, lock it, make it 2D, and you don't have to worry about it thereafter. Okay, so I made a slight miscalculation, I think, in setting this blend mode to add. I think I prefer screen because it's going to give me slightly more see-through results rather than this very, very inky black that I'm getting at the moment. So I selected all 5, set the blend mode to screen. You can see that's immediately made them all softer. I'm now going to come back to my levels, and I'm going to reduce the value here. That's actually increasing the brightness of the core, but because we're inverted, it's looking the other way around. Also going to reduce the white level a bit. Don't want it to be black. It's a very, very small amount just to give it a little bit more density. Okay, so let's turn off everything except Cloud A. In fact, let's take them all and reduce their scale because that's too much. Let's reduce them to 50%. Again, let's select Cloud A. I want to start making my dark bit in here between those. What I'm going to just do is layer these up in the same spot so they start to get darker and darker. Again, let's make sure we've got lots of nice detail by having small elements as well as large. So again, let's turn on C. Where's that? That's over here. This one we can rotate like that, as we've done before. Maybe move that up a bit. That's protruding into the dark bit there. That's quite good. And shrink it down a bit. Shrink it down a bit more. Turn on cloud D. Again, bring it into that spot there. Shrinking it down. That sort of works quite well, even just protruding into that other bit there. Turn on cloud E. And I think I'll have some up over here. That was my original plan, was to have a little bit more complexity up there. So I'm going to duplicate cloud D, holding down the Alt key, that is, to just bring some of this dark behavior up into that area there. And you can see how that really adds drama. I might just add a little bit more even into there. Flip that over. Possibly make that go up into there. Take cloud A maybe, bring that over to that same spot. Shrink it down. So that's really starting to look pretty dramatic, I think, with those dark areas. And I probably won't waste any more of your time fiddling around with it. What we need to do is to make a nice bright star to give us a little bit of drama, and a planet to give us a little bit of depth. So that's our next step. So I hope you'll be able to join me again for part 3, which I promise won't be nearly as long. So thanks very much indeed for watching, and see you later.